Good morning, everyone. So, in yesterday's session, we were seeing about the spinal nerves and the spinal cord. Okay. So, in today's session, we are going to see in detail about the brain. Okay. The brain. The brain is composed of, can be divided into many parts. Okay. So, and the largest part of which is the cerebrum. Okay. The cerebrum is the largest part of the brain. Okay, so we will be saying about the cerebrum in detail, and then we will be looking at the other parts of the brain as well. So as I said, this is the largest part of the brain, and the cerebrum is divided into right and left hemispheres. It's divided into right and left hemispheres. So here you can see the right hemisphere and the left hemispheres. So it is divided into right, okay, and a left hemispheres, and in between it is divided. Okay, the two cerebral hemispheres are divided except for a small portion where it is attached to one another, and this is called as corpus callosum. Okay, so the corpus callosum is the place where the two cerebral hemispheres are connected with one another. Okay, so they are connected by corpus callosum. Now, in the spinal cord, if you would have seen, okay, in the spinal cord, I'll just show you here. See, this is the spinal cord. You can see the gray matter is in the center. Okay, this is the gray matter. The gray matter is in the center and the white matter is outside. But contrarily, in cerebrum, the superficial part is gray matter and the deep part is white matter. Okay, so the gray matter is superficial and the white matter is deep in cerebrum, whereas in spinal cord it is opposite. The gray matter is deep and the white matter is superficial. And if you see the cerebrum shows many depressions. Okay, so many depressions. These depressions are called as sulci. Okay, or sulci. Okay, so it is called as sulci. And the elevated part which we are able to see, that is called as gyri. Okay, so sulci and gyri. So this sulcus and gyrus increase the surface area of the cerebrum. Okay, so here you can see a large number of depressions. So these depressions, they are called as sulcus. Sorry. Okay, so these are called as sulcus. And here you are able to see the elevated part. The elevated portion is called as gyrus. Okay, so sulcus and gyrus. All right, so cerebrum is the largest part, divided into right and left hemispheres, and but it is connected at a small part which is called as corpus callosum. It has got a superficial gray matter and a deep white matter. The surface of the cerebrum has shown many sulci and gyri, okay, which increases the surface area of the cerebrum. Okay. All right. Now we'll see how the cerebrum is divided. The cerebrum can be divided. Each cerebral hemisphere is divided into 4 lobes. Okay, can be divided into 4 lobes. The part which is anterior, it is called as frontal lobe. Okay, so frontal bone, you know that, right? In the skull, there is a frontal bone. Just behind the frontal bone is the frontal lobe. Okay, and behind this, there is a parietal lobe. Okay, then below the parietal lobe, okay, is the temporal lobe. And lastly, on the posterior side, it is the occipital lobe. Okay, so the cerebral hemisphere is divided into 4 lobes: frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital lobes. Okay, so there are 4 cerebral lobes in each cerebral hemisphere. Okay. cerebral hemisphere can be divided. Okay, so there are certain sulci which form these lobes. These sulci are central sulcus, lateral sulcus, and parieto-occipital sulcus. Now let's see, like, where are these sulcus located? I'll just show you in this picture. So here you can see there is a sulcus here. Okay, so this sulcus is called as the lateral sulcus. Okay, so you can see a depression here. Okay, so this is the lateral sulcus. Okay, here you can see a sulcus between these two structures. Okay, and this sulcus, you can see that it is coming down like this. Okay, so this sulcus between the motor and sensory, this sulcus, it's called as central sulcus. Okay, it's called as central sulcus. Okay, and here you are able to see a small sulcus. This is called as parieto-occipital sulcus. Okay, parieto-occipital sulcus. Okay, so this is lateral sulcus, central sulcus, and parieto-occipital sulcus. Okay, so these form the boundaries of the lobes: central sulcus, lateral sulcus, and parieto-occipital sulcus. Any doubts until now?
No.
All right. So the next one, the cerebrum is connected. The cerebrum is connected with one another, okay, by means of certain tracts. Okay, I'll just put this separately. Okay, so there are three tracts in the cerebrum. So one is the association tract, the other one is commissural tract, and the last one is the projection tract. Okay, now let's see each one of these tracts. Tracts means they contain only the white fibers. Okay, they contain the axons. Okay, tract means they contain the axons. What is an association tract? They connect different parts within the same cerebral hemisphere. Okay, so within each cerebral hemisphere, they will connect. Okay, so here in one of these picture, look at this picture. Okay, so in this picture, if you see here, there are certain fibers which are connecting. See, it is connecting the frontal to the parietal. Then one is connecting frontal to the occipital. There are certain fibers which connecting occipital to the temporal, and from the temporal to the frontal. Okay, so these are fibers which are connecting the parts of the brain within each cerebral hemisphere. Okay, within each cerebral hemisphere. So this is an association tract. That is, they connect different parts within the same cerebral hemisphere. Now, what is the next one? The next one is the commissural tract. Commissural tract. So what is this commissural tract? They connect corresponding areas of the brain of two cerebral hemispheres. Okay, so here you can see the example. Okay, now in this example, if you see, okay, so here you can see from the temporal lobe of one right cerebral hemisphere, the fibers are going through the corpus callosum to the other temporal lobe. Similarly, from one part, it goes through the corpus callosum to the other. So they connect the same portion of the cerebral hemisphere of the opposite sides. Okay. So here, commissural tract is the one which connects the corresponding areas, similar areas of two cerebral hemispheres. And lastly, the projection tract. The projection tract connects the cerebral cortex to the lower parts of the brain or the spinal cord. So these are fibers, axons, they connect from the brain to the other parts, the lower part of the brain, which is called as brain stem, okay, and then to the spinal cord. The fibers can go to the spinal cord, okay. Now, why all these things are required? Why this association tract is required? Why the commissural tract is required? Why the projection tract is required? Okay, so suppose if association tract, okay, in association tract, how does it work? Say for example, okay, when someone asks you a question, so I asked you a question, are you able to understand, right? So what did you reply? Yes, I understood. So how did this process takes place? Okay, so when I ask a question, you hear the question. So it passes through the ear, okay, and then it reaches the brain. Okay, it reaches one part of the brain, which is the temporal lobe. Okay, it reaches the temporal lobe. Okay, so the hearing area is located in the temporal lobe. Okay, so you understand the question. Then what happens afterwards? This is then processed and then sent to the another area, which is the speech area. Okay, which is the speech area. Okay, so here the thing, here whatever you want to say, it is processed. Okay, and then you give me the answer. Okay, you tell the answer. Okay, so each cerebral hemisphere needs to be connected because each part of the brain has got different functions. Okay, for example, the occipital lobe has got a visual function. Okay, the frontal cortex has got emotional aspects. Okay, all our emotions. Okay, so sane is sanity, everything, it is stored in the frontal cortex. Okay, so there are certain fibers which connect within each cerebral hemisphere. So when this is lost, when the association tract, if they are not working, what will happen? There will be no integration in the brain. Okay, you ask a question, the person does not understand the question, okay, or he understands, he doesn't able to speak. Okay, so that's why the association tract is important. Okay, you can take many examples, not only the questions. Say you see something and then you want to talk about it. Okay, so you are seeing a structure or something. Okay, so a beautiful building, and then you want to describe it. So that's the fibers which connect the optic to the speech area. Okay, so these fibers are important to connect different areas of the cerebral hemisphere. All right, any doubts? All right, coming to the next part, the commissural tract. Why the commissural tract is important? The commissural tract, if you see, they are connecting the different parts. Sorry. The commissural tract, they are connecting different parts of the brain. Okay, so the different areas of the brain, okay, of both the right and left cerebral hemispheres. Okay, so for example, so why this is important, the commissural tract. For example, you are driving a car. Okay, your right hand is on the gear, okay, to change the car gear, or you want to change the music or something, but your left hand is driving the car. Okay, so there is an integration. Or if you are going to do something, say for example, you are going to hit a nail on a wall. Okay, so you are going to hit a nail on a wall. So what happens? Your left hand, you catch the nail, and in the right hand, you hit with the hammer. So there needs to be a coordination between the right hand and the left hand. Okay, so in our body, the right side of our body is controlled by the left cerebral hemisphere, and the left side of our body is controlled by the right cerebral hemisphere. Okay, so there needs to be a coordination. Okay, so the right half of the brain should know what the left half of the brain is doing. And similarly, the left half of the brain should know what the right half is doing. So there needs to be a connection and understanding between them. So how is this being connected? So this is by means of the fibers. Okay, the commissural tract. The commissural tract connects similar areas of the brain. Okay, so they connect similar areas of the brain. Okay, so that's the commissural tract. They connect similar areas of two cerebral hemispheres. Okay, lastly, the projection tract. The projection tract is connecting from the cerebrum to the spinal cord or the lower cerebral spinal tract. Okay, lower part of the brains. So now what is this function? So you know that the spinal cord is the one which controls the lower limb and none of the structures. But the brain also controls the spinal cord. Okay, it also controls the spinal cord. Okay, which is called as cortico-spinal tract. Okay, so from the cerebral cortex, it goes towards the spinal cord. So that is the cortico-spinal tract. That is a motor part. Okay, so the motor impulses, they start from the cerebrum and then they pass to the spinal cord, which is called as cortico-spinal tract. Okay, any doubts? So association, commissural, and projection tracts. Okay, so these are the three tracts found in the cerebrum. Association within the same cerebral hemisphere, commissural, corresponding areas of each cerebral hemisphere, that is the right and left, and the last one, the projection, it projects from the cerebrum to the other parts of the brain and the spinal cord. Okay, any doubts?
No, doctor.
Okay, coming to the next one. The functional areas of the brain. Okay, the functional, each part of the, and now I said in the previous session, okay, in the previous slide, I said that each part of the cerebrum has got different function. Okay, so now we are going to see some of the most important structures which are located in the cerebrum. For example, the primary motor area. The primary motor area is located in the precentral gyrus. It's located in the precentral gyrus. The sensory area is located in the postcentral gyrus. Broca's area, it is located in the frontal lobe above the lateral sulcus. Wernicke's area, which is also called the sensory speech, end of the lateral sulcus. Auditory area in the temporal lobe, and visual area in the parieto-occipital sulcus. Now, let's see each one of them in this picture. Okay, so what is the meaning of precentral gyrus? Okay, precentral gyrus. You know this one is the central sulcus. Okay, this is the central sulcus. Now, anterior to the central sulcus, here you can see a gyrus. This is precentral gyrus. Okay, so it is precentral gyrus. Okay, so this is precentral gyrus. The precentral gyrus is a primary motor area. What is the meaning of primary motor area? So this is the place where the actions are formed. Okay, so suppose if you want to lift a pen, if you want to type, okay, so this impulse is starting from this part of the brain. So this is the primary motor area. Okay, primary motor area. Now coming to the next part, the primary sensory area. Okay, so this is pre-central because it is located anterior to the central gyrus, central sulcus. Okay, now the sensory area is located behind the central sulcus. So this is called as post-central gyrus. Okay, post-central gyrus. Okay, so here you can see post-central gyrus. So pre-central gyrus is concerned with motor functions, whereas the post-central gyrus is concerned with sensory functions. So what is the main sensory functions? So whatever the impulses which we feel, okay, so suppose if an insect is okay is climbing on our legs, okay, so we will realize the sensation will travel fast to the spinal cord, and from the spinal cord it goes to the thalamus, and from the thalamus it goes to the cerebral cortex. Then we realize that okay, there is a sensation, something which is present in our leg. Okay, then the motor actions will take place. Okay, so from the sensation, the things it will be interpreted and it will be sent to the motor part. So in the motor part, what the person will do, this motor part will then send signals to the corresponding muscles of the leg through the spinal cord. Okay, and then the person removes or shakes his leg, okay, to get rid of the insect. Okay, so all this happens in microseconds. Okay, so you cannot believe like how fast it takes place, right? So the sensation and the motor. Okay, so sensory is post-central gyrus, whereas the motor is pre-central gyrus. Any doubts in these two?
No, doctor.
All right, coming to the next part, the Broca's area and Wernicke's area, or motor speech and sensory speech. So here you can see the Broca's speech, which is located in the frontal area above the lateral sulcus, and the Wernicke's area is located at the end of the lateral sulcus. Okay, so what is this Broca's area and Wernicke's area? So this is called a sensory speech area, and this one is called as motor speech area. Okay, now to know that you need to know another area, which is the auditory area. Okay, the auditory area which is located in the temporal lobe. Okay, the auditory area. Okay, so this is the one which we have discussed already. Okay, I told you, right? So if someone asks you a question, okay, which way is the way to the university or the hospital? Okay, so what do? What is you will be responding, you will be helping them, right? You will be telling the way. But how does it process in the brain? Okay, so what happens when a person hears, okay, when a person asks a question, another person asks a question, okay, the hearing impulses go through the ear, okay, and then it will reach the temporal lobe, that is the auditory area. Okay, the auditory area. Okay, so here the person hears the question, he hears the question. Okay, then what happens? Okay, he need to process it. Okay, he needs to understand. This is only hearing part. Okay, the next part is he needs to understand what is this question about. Okay, so that understanding takes place here in the Wernicke's area. Okay, so here he will be able to understand or process the information what he heard, and then he develops a response. Okay, and then he develops a response. Okay, he knows and understands the question. Okay, and he develops the response. Okay, he is going to know, he knows the answer and he wants to tell the answer. Then what happens? From the Wernicke's area, the information is sent to the Broca's area. Okay, and in the Broca's area, from the Broca's area, this is the motor speech area. Okay, so from the Broca's area, it goes towards the vocal cords. Okay, you know vocal cords is the one which helps in production of speech. Okay, so the Wernicke's area helps in understanding the part, okay, understanding the question and processing the information, and then it sends to the motor area. The motor area is the one which helps in the person to speak. Okay, so this takes place also very fast, isn't it? So the auditory area, the person is able to hear, okay, and in the vernix area, he is able to process and develop the answer, and in the Broca's area, he will be able to tell the answer. Okay, now why this is important? Say for example, one person's vernix area is not working, okay, or the blood supply to the vernix area is damaged. Okay, the vernix area is damaged. Okay, the blood supply to that part of the brain is gone. Okay, the vernix area is not responding. So what happens if you ask a question to this person? Okay, you ask the person a question, so he is not able to understand the question. Okay, so he will be giving an irrelevant answer. Okay, he will be giving an irrelevant answer. Okay, you ask one question, he will give a different answer. Okay, so that's because he is unable to process the information. Okay, so that's if the vernix area is damaged. Okay, now what happens if the Broca's area is damaged? If the Broca's area is damaged, what happens? The vernix area is functioning and the Broca's area is damaged. So here you ask a question, the person is able to understand, he is able to respond, okay, but he is unable to speak. Okay, he is unable to speak. Okay, he knows the answer, he understands the question, okay, but he is unable to respond. Okay, he is unable to speak. So that's because of Broca's area damage. Okay, so if vernix area is damaged, the person cannot understand. If the Broca's area is damaged, the person cannot speak. Okay, so how to know that whether the person is able to understand or not? You ask the person, give a different task. Ask the question and ask him to write the answer. He will be able to write the answer because it goes from the vernix area to the motor area. Okay, if he is asked to write the answer, he will be able to write the answer. But if you ask him to say, he won't be able to say. So that means the Broca's area is damaged. Whereas if the vernix area is damaged, even if you ask him to write, he will not know the answer. Okay.
So
Okay,
doctor, if the Broca's area will be damaged, he can write the right answer, but cannot see it.
Yes.
Okay.
In Broca's area, if the Broca's area is damaged and this area is functioning, the motor area is functioning. So what happens? If you ask him a question, okay, and if you ask him to write, he can write the correct answer. Okay, but if you ask him to tell, he won't be able to tell. Okay, if vernix area is damaged, he will be able to tell the answers clearly. Okay, but it is not the right answer. He will be giving some other answer. If vernix is, because he is unable to process the information. You ask him where is the way, he will be telling my name is something. Okay, so that's the difference between vernix area and Broca's area. Okay, any
Like
doubts?
Broca's area, the tissue is damaged or the nerves connecting to the vocal cords are damaged.
Yes. All right. So sometimes your questions might come like this. Okay, a person is coming. Okay, and he is unable to understand or he gives a wrong answer. So which area of the brain is damaged? Okay, you should also know where it is located. The vernix area is located at the end of the lateral sulcus. whereas the Broca's area is located in the frontal lobe above the lateral sulcus. Okay, the auditory lobe in the temporal lobe. All right, and lastly, the speech area. Sorry, the visual area. Okay, the visual area. Okay, the visual area, it is the visual area is the one which is concerned with vision. Okay, similar to the one. What happens? Our eyes sees. Okay, our eyes can see. Okay, but what processes? Okay, what makes us understand what we see? So that's the visual area. So we realize that this is a bench, this is a chair, laptop, pen, pencil. So all this is because the interpretation will be taking place in the brain, the visual area, which is located in the occipital lobe. Okay, which is located in the occipital lobe. Okay. So once again, the precentral gyrus is motor area. The postcentral gyrus is sensory area. Above the above the lateral sulcus in the frontal lobe, it is the Broca's or the motor speech area. At the end of the lateral sulcus, it is the Wernicke's area or the sensory speech area. In the temporal lobe, below the lateral sulcus, it's the auditory area, and the visual area located in the behind the occipital sulcus in the occipital lobe. Okay, in the occipital lobe. Any doubts? Any
No,
doubts?
doctor.
Okay. So we have seen about the cerebral cortex. Now let's see the other parts of the brain. Okay, we have seen cerebral cortex. Now we'll see the other parts of the brain. So these parts of the brain, they are more important physiologically. So they will be discussed in your second semester in detail. Okay, but with regard to the anatomy aspects, I will be telling you now. Okay, so these parts, so one is called as the basal ganglia. Okay, so the basal ganglia, it is located deep within the cerebral cortex. Okay, so here you can see these are parts of the basal ganglia. Okay, so here you can see putamen, subthalamic nuclei, substantial nuclei, thalamus. Okay, so all these are parts of the basal ganglia. Okay, the thalamus. The thalamus is the sensory relay center. Okay, it's the sensory relay center. Okay, this is also located deep into the brain. Okay, and lastly, the hypothalamus. Okay, the hypothalamus is situated just above the pituitary gland. And the hypothalamus is a very important structure which controls the appetite, thirst, body temperature, emotional reactions, sexual behavior, circadian rhythms. All these are controlled by the hypothalamus. Okay, it's being controlled by the hypothalamus. All right. So in this picture, we will see this is the basal ganglia. The basal ganglia is composed of caudate nucleus, putamen. This is called as globus pallidus. Yes, here it is, globus pallidus. Okay, subthalamic nucleus. Okay, so these are parts of the basal ganglia. Okay, basal ganglia. Okay, so what is the main function of this basal ganglia? So this will be discussed in detail in second semester, but I will be telling you a little bit. Okay, so they help in smoothness of function. Okay, they help in smoothing function. So for example, if you want to write something, okay, you are able to write it, okay, fast, okay, in a smooth manner. So what happens if the basal ganglia is damaged? If the basal ganglia is damaged, the person cannot write. Okay, so the person cannot write, and what happens? His handwriting will be somewhat, okay, like difficult to write. Okay, so it will not be proper. It won't be any coordinated like the one which I write right now. Okay, so that's because of I'm using the mouse. Okay, so if the basal ganglia is damaged, okay, so they lead on to a condition which is one of the condition which is called as Parkinson's. Okay, so that's because of the damage to the basal ganglia. Okay, so where the person will be having tremor. Okay, there will be tremor even when the person is at rest. Okay, his hands will be keep on shaking. Okay, and if you ask him to write, he cannot write. Okay, so there will be difficulty in writing for that person. Okay, so that's because of the basal ganglia damage or the chemicals which are present in the basal ganglia are depleted. Okay, the next one is the thalamus. The thalamus is the sensory relay center. So what is the meaning of relay center? You know that the impulse, okay, the Wi-Fi impulse or something. Okay, so how does it travel from one part to the other, from one room to the another room? Okay, we keep something what is called as router, right? So there will be a modem. Okay, so from the modem there will be to the router, and from the router it goes to all the devices. So similarly, this is like a relay device. Okay, it's like a relay center. So all the impulses, the sensory sensations from the spine, which is connected from the body through the spinal cord, they will come to the thalamus. Okay, and from the thalamus, it then goes to the cerebral cortex. Which part of the cerebral cortex? Post-central gyrus. We have seen it, right? The post-central gyrus. Okay, so from the thalamus, it goes to the post-central gyrus. So thalamus is mainly a sensory unit, a sensory relay center. Okay, a sensory relay center. Okay, and lastly, hypothalamus. Okay, the hypothalamus, okay, it is located just above the pituitary gland, the hypothalamus. It is situated just above the pituitary gland. And what is the main function of this hypothalamus? It is to make us realize like what we are. Okay, so for example, when we get hungry, we go and eat. Thirst, we drink water. Temperature maintenance, we feel hot, cold. Okay, emotional reactions, laugh, cry, sad. Okay, so all those emotional reactions, sexual behaviors, circadian rhythm. What is circadian rhythm? We sleep in the night and wake up in the morning. Okay, so that's the normal routine. Okay, so that is the circadian rhythm. Okay, so the circadian rhythm, all these are maintained by the hypothalamus. Okay, so they are maintained by the hypothalamus. Okay, so this is in short about some of the functions. So in detail, the second semester, okay, so they will be dealing in detail about all these things. What is the name of the chemical? Okay, and what happens if this chemical is depleted? Okay, it's the dopamine. You know, already know that Parkinson's is because of dopamine. So the dopamine will be less, and as a result, the person will have tremor in his hands. Okay, and he will be having difficulty in walking, etc. Okay, so this is regarding the basal ganglia. All right. Any doubts?
No, doctor.
All right. And this is the last part of the cerebrum. So here we will be discussing the arterial supply to the brain. If you remember, in the circulatory system also we have dealt with the same. Okay, the circle of Willis. Okay, the circle of Willis, it is formed by the vertebral artery and internal carotid artery. Okay, now we are going to see in detail about this. This is called the circle of Willis. Okay, the circle of Willis. It is formed by the internal carotid artery. Here you can see the internal carotid artery and the vertebral artery. Okay, the vertebral artery. Okay, so the circle of Willis is formed by internal carotid artery and the vertebral artery. Okay, now we look at how this is formed. You can see the two vertebral arteries. The two vertebral arteries join together. Okay, they join together to form the basilar artery. Okay, they join together to form basilar artery. Okay, the two vertebral arteries. There are two vertebral arteries, right and left. They join together to form the basilar artery. Now, this basilar artery divides into two. Okay, it finally divides. There are many branches, but finally it divides into two, and this final branch is called as posterior cerebral artery. Okay, posterior cerebral artery. Now, from the internal carotid artery, there is a branch. Okay, and this branch, a direct branch, which is called as middle cerebral artery. Middle cerebral artery. Now, there is an artery which connects the posterior cerebral artery. Okay, the posterior cerebral artery on the other side, it is this one. It connects the posterior cerebral artery and the middle cerebral artery. Okay, so the name of this artery is posterior communicating artery. Okay, posterior communicating artery. Similarly, there is another branch from the internal carotid which goes anterior and is called as anterior cerebral artery. Anterior cerebral artery. Okay, and the artery which connects both of this is the anterior communicating artery. So this is posterior communicating, and this one, okay, this part, okay, is the posterior communicating artery. The part which connects the two anterior cerebral arteries, it is the anterior communicating artery. All right. So once again, the circle of Willis, it is formed by the internal carotid artery, okay, and by the vertebral artery. The two vertebral arteries join together to form the basilar artery. The basilar artery divides into two parts, the posterior cerebral arteries, okay, the right and left posterior cerebral arteries. The internal carotid artery joins with the posterior cerebral artery through the posterior communicating artery. Okay, through the posterior communicating artery. Okay, then the other branches from the internal carotid will be middle cerebral artery and anterior cerebral artery. Okay, the middle cerebral artery, it goes and supplies the lateral part of the brain. The anterior cerebral artery of both the sides are connected by a small unifying branch which is called as anterior communicating artery. Okay, which is called as anterior communicating artery. Any doubts? Any doubts?
No, doctor.
Yes. So here you can see anterior and posterior cerebral arteries, anterior and posterior communicating artery, and basilar artery. Okay. All right. So with this, we come to the end of the cerebrum. Okay. In the next class, we will be seeing about the brainstem. Okay. So as you saw in today's class, it's a bit difficult. I know that it is a bit difficult. Okay, and you can it might be a little bit difficult for you to understand. So see the video. I will be sending you the recordings. Okay, so see the videos.